You're listening to Redneck Redemption. I'm Todd.
I'm Drew.
I'm his dad.
I'm his son.
It's going to sound a little weird a couple of times like I interrupt Drew. We had a little bit of a delay messing with new equipment, but we got it figured out before the next episode. Also, you're going to hear my cool grandson in the background. And here's just a little sample of some things we're going to be talking about in today's episode. I hope you enjoy.
Listen, let's talk about the nail guns first.
We're not building cabinets here, man. I shoot myself in more creative places.
Dropped your pants.
I
did shoot myself, you moron.
That hook stuck in my top lip. Make it up the way you want it, son. Just make it up the way you want it.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. Hey. All right, we're live.
Yes, sir. We're back again.
Yet again. I guess this will probably be our first episode where we're trying out some new equipment and a new system. We're no longer sitting in the same room on the opposite sides of the same mic. We're about 1,600 miles away from each other, and we're trying desperately to make it sound like we're sitting side by side yet again. So,
man, isn't it crazy to think you can be 1,600 miles apart and just talk like this right across these computers in a little studio setting? It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And as old Phil Robertson says on Unashamed to all you out there in computer land, understand. We're desperately trying to work through these bugs and work through some background noise. We've done some test episodes that didn't really go as planned, but we're enjoying getting the stuff out there, and we're enjoying the feedback we get from you guys. And when you get two rednecks together, really any bunch of rednecks, but two rednecks together like me and Dad, we're gonna have a blast sharing our stories with you. And when you get two believers together, such as me and Dad, we're going to have a blast sharing his story, his being God's story. And that's our hope and prayer, is that through this, you hear his story through our story. Man, Dad, back over to you.
No, that's well said. I was just sitting here listening to you talk about that. We talked before when we did the promo. You were talking about how Jesus is always telling stories and using parables to bring about truth. You said something about concrete and abstract. How he combines those two to make something, and so to make a spiritual truth we can understand. And yep. So it's pretty cool how if you really look for it, you see the gospel in everything that you see, and then if you're willing to use your stories to I guess further the gospel, promote the kingdom cause, man, no telling what stories God will give you.
Oh yeah. As we are perfect examples that there are no telling what stories God will give you, and if you think about it, our story is just a continuation of the stories that are in the Bible. But anyway, how's life going down in Northeast Texas, Dad?
Hey, it's getting warmer, man. We just had a snowpocalypse a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, and right now I set up a studio in your grandfather's shop building. It's a wood shop, man. And when I walked out here, I'm sweating. It's crazy the difference. Crazy difference in the weather just in a week or two. Of course, when you live in Northeast Texas or Southwest Arkansas, and you guys that live in other parts of the state or the world, you might say the same kind of thing. We always say if you don't like the weather, give it 30 minutes. It'll be different.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Unpredictable.
I always thought where I grew up right there in that corner of the world was the worst about unpredictable weather until I moved to Virginia. Not only is it unpredictable, but you can pretty much bet most of your paycheck that the forecast is always going to be wrong. And about the time you hunker down on the forecast and you're like, it's going to snow or rain or whatever the case, it does the exact opposite. So, now you
always hear people say that's why they call him a weatherman, because they don't know whether or not it's going to rain. So anyway, they can't predict
that. Yeah. Oh yeah. But about a week ago, you celebrated a birthday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did. Where's this going? By the way, for you listeners, we made an agreement. We made an agreement earlier today on the phone that we like it when Drew just leads out and just bumps me. And so he's more prepared than I am for what we're always going to talk about. So now I'm on edge. I'm like, what's he going to bring up?
Oh,
so, yeah, I did. I had a birthday last week.
Oh,
I certainly did. I celebrated a few more times around the sun.
Oh, yeah, a few more times. Every time your birthday season comes around now, I can't help but think about that song your friend wrote about you on your what they call it, the golden year, the golden birthday celebration. about what? 2-3 years ago now.
That's 2 years ago. Yeah, sure enough.
Okay.
Yeah, Brother Brad.
Pasta Brother
Got
Brad.
got a good buddy.
Oh yeah, we'll have to have him on here sometime.
Get him on here. You're right.
Yeah, and we'll have to get him on here and get him to record that song and put it on here. But I want to talk about the occurrences that led to that song. More specifically, the occurrences that led to him making a very profound statement about a Southern Baptist preacher. If I recall correctly, he told you you're the only Southern Baptist preacher he knows that advocates body piercings.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think he did say that, man. That's what Jesus did, right?
Hey, you're just following in the footsteps. Except, you're using the most
right.
You're using the most modern technology with some nail guns over there.
Yeah, or fish hooks or whatever. Whatever it takes to make a hole in the body, man.
Listen, let's talk about the nail guns first, because I feel like those would be a good starting point for stories. What was the first time you shot yourself with those nail guns?
Oh, good Lord, man, that's a good question. Okay, I see now why you didn't pre-prompt me for what we're going to talk about today. It's all on me.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. The first time I shot myself with a nail gun, golly, I can't remember when the first time was. I'll go through just a couple of sequences. I do remember. I think it was when we were building this building I'm sitting in right now. My father-in-law, your grandpa and I were framing this thing, and he kept telling me, he said, "Man, you better slow down." Of course, I told him, I said, "We're not building cabinets here, man. It's going to take 20 years to frame these walls if you keep moving so slow." Bill and I just enjoyed giving each other a hard time. But the funny thing about your grandpa, he just, he didn't move real fast, but he was consistent, and he could get more work done than I could. I'm trying to kill it, and he's just steady. Slow and steady wins the race. But anyway, he was on to me about going so fast. He said, "You're going to shoot yourself."
Grandpa was the embodiment of the concept. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a good way to put that. He really was. He really was. So he's mouthing at me, man, about you're going to shoot yourself. Slow down. And then there in a minute, I heard him let a word fly, and I looked over there, and he had shot that 16 penny nail right down his thumb. And anyway, I said, "What was that you telling me?"
I remember that day. It was in the summer, because if I remember correctly, all of us boys were out in the swimming pool swimming. And I walked up to ask Grandma for something, and she was doctoring Grandpa, and you were sitting there, of course, jabbing fun at Grandpa. I thought you said I was going to shoot myself with this nail gun, yada, yada, yada. Bill, you this, that, and the other. And then it wasn't 2 days later when, and I'll turn it back over to you to relay the rest of the story.
Oh, yeah. We were rolling, man, steady framing this thing. And, of course, I had to run the mouth a little bit whenever he shot himself after saying I was going to. But my gun sort of had this double bounce thing going on, and I'm bad about using the safety for a trigger, so I just keep the trigger pulled and bump the safety. And every now and then it would bump twice, and man, sure enough, man, it hit so hard it bumped twice, and on that second bump, it was just a little above the 2x4, and it shot straight across and went in my hand. And what was crazy, the whole nail, it went all the way in the top of my hand, on my left hand, on the right hand side, right by my thumb. It went in and went straight across, all the way across my hand. But what was insane was you could see the whole nail almost. It was just underneath my skin. It didn't touch a single bone. It went right above all those metatarsals. I don't know what I'm talking about. It starts with metatarsals. Whatever them little bones are that go between your wrist and your fingers. It went right above all those between the skin and that. And so I'm looking at that sucker, and I thought, yeah, and I knew I got to get it out of there as quick as I can, and the quicker you get it out, the better off you're going to be, because I'm a master at hurting myself. So I just happen to know when you hurt yourself, act fast. So I grabbed it. It sunk all the way to the head, man, and I grabbed that joker and jerked it out, and because it wasn't supposed to be there.
No,
wasn't supposed to be there, so I got it out as fast as I could.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that. I think I mentioned in a previous podcast I worked for a cabinet maker for 2 years, which I guess I inherited some of Grandpa's caution, because I only managed to shoot myself with those nail guns once or twice. I actually caught my fingers. I caught my fingers in the rebound off chop saws more than I shot myself. But I remember one day I was building. I was building a stand that we used to use, just a little T-frame stand we used to put granite and different countertops on that weighed something, out of 2x4s, and I had this piece that I'd cut at a 45-degree angle as a support, and like a dummy, I lined that nail gun up where I was shooting straight through, like you would nailing two boards together, and it never occurred to me that since I had that 45-degree angle on one side, that nail's a whole lot longer than the material it had to go through, and it went all the way through, and we'll just say where it ended up, I wouldn't have had a problem with pressure building under there from those two blood blisters I got underneath my fingernail, because that nail went far enough in there, it touched the bottom of my fingernail from the other side. That was not much, that was not very painful. Comfortable either. But
you know what's crazy? Most of the time I've shot myself, it's been in places where it didn't hurt that bad. And that right there, the bottom side of your finger, straight up to your fingernail, that one would have hurt. But I mean, I shoot myself in more creative places.
Yeah, like your kneecap. Was Pastor Brother Brad there?
Yeah, Brad was.
I thought so.
Yeah, Brad was with me that time. We're at the cabin, building that cabin, and we had we're putting plywood. We made this cabin. It's 2-story. And the top story is shaped like a barn roof, and so it's kind of a loft up there. Well, I'm putting this OSB on the inside of the walls, and I'm doing the same thing, using the safety for a trigger. So I just keep the trigger held down, and I'm slinging that thing, bang, bang, bang. Well, this day that I'm doing it, Brad's up there helping me, and I've got a problem with this particular. It's an old nailer. And I'm shooting 1.5-inch staples. And so they're staples made for plywood. They're 1.5 inches long. And, man, it only shoots about 2 out of 3 swings. So you have to, out of 3 times that you hit it, it only shoots 2 staples, So, man, I'm staple. And Brad's watching me. He said, man, you're fast with that thing. I said, man, yeah, boy, I'm slinging it. And when I got done, I'm leaned over because it's not a flat wall. It's kind of leaned a little bit. And I'm leaned way over. And when I finish, I let the hose come down and slide through my hand, and when it did, it slung around, and the whole gun hit the side of my knee on the inside of my left knee, and it went off. Pow! And I thought, uh-oh. And my first thought was, dear Jesus, Lord, please let it be one of those 1 out of 3 that didn't shoot a staple. So when I looked down at my jeans, and sure enough, man, my jeans were sucked up into my skin on the right-hand side of my left kneecap. And I thought, oh, man. So I just real quick, I showed Brad, and he was like, dude. And I grabbed my jeans, and I jerked real fast. Because I thought, man, I got to hurry up and try to get this thing out of there. And I knew one of 2 things is going to happen because I jerked it hard. Either I'm fixing to pull this thing out, or it's stuck in the bone inside of my knee, and it's going to rip my jeans, and it's still going to be in there. So I jerked my jeans real fast, and it came straight out, man. Again, grace of God, 1.5 inch staple, both tongs went underneath my kneecap, between my kneecap, and I don't know how I kept from hurting my little meniscus thing or whatever it is down there. It did hurt quite a bit, but when I jerked it out, Brad said, dude, that looked real. That looked real. And I said, what do you mean look real? I dropped my pants, and he's like, what are you doing? And the blood starts coming out from my knee. He goes, and man, I hope Brad listens to this because I'm not making this up. I promise. Man, I'm sitting there looking at this thing. I look over, and Brad's about to pass out. He has to sit down for a minute. I said, it was me. I'm the one hurt, Anyway, we had good times, man. Good times.
When we get him on here, we will definitely recount some of these, revisit some of these stories. But that is you want to talk about the true mark of a redneck. You got to show the evidence of what happened. You know what I mean? You dropped your pants. I did shoot myself, man. You moron.
I ain't scared. What do you mean? Look at this. I'll prove it to you.
Now, was Brad there? When you shot yourself, I could have swore he was there helping us build Grandpa's shop when you shot yourself that day.
It seems like he's been with me on more than one occasion when I shot myself with a nail gun, but I can't remember for sure.
That has to be the case, because I remember after the story that we're about to tell, it is, as my memory serves me, and we'll get Brad on here one day to correct our version of events, I'm sure. But as my memory serves me, it was after this next occurrence. It may have been while during this next occurrence that he said, "You're the only Baptist preacher I know that advocates body piercings." What about that time you were the biggest catch of the day?
Hey, it's crazy. It's weird how many people remember this story.
Yeah, and I'll add my 2 cents worth in here in a moment on this story. But you go ahead and you tell what happened from your perspective, and I'll give some backstory to this.
What happened from my perspective is that punk set a hook in my lip. That's what happened.
Tell the whole story.
Man, I guess I'm the only guy on the planet that's ever got a hook in his lip at a baptism service. Because what happened was one of the, we got this guy in our church. We call him Rambo, and he's got this pond and a fish cooking hut on this little kind of like a peninsula, and it's just a cool place. We like to go there and hang out. But when his grandson got saved, he wanted to get baptized there, and his mother as well. Both of them wanted to be baptized there at the family pond, and they said, "Man, if you want to do that, if you'll do this, we'll have a service out there, and we'll feed the whole church or whoever comes." So, man, he cooked barbecue. He could smoke some meat, couldn't he, son?
Oh,
that dude,
yeah.
He was good on it. He was good on that smoker. Well, anyway, we go to have the service out there, and a ton of people show up for this baptism service. And of course, my kids want to fish, so we bring the rod and reels. Well, there's a kid there, and I can't remember this kid's name because I didn't know him. He didn't go to our church, but he was kin to them somehow, and so he kept going on and on about, "Man, I want to fish. And of course, we kept telling him nobody's fishing until after the baptism. And so he keeps making the big deal about wanting to fish. And so when the baptism's over, I get one of my kids, my youngest son, your youngest brother James, had a little like a Snoopy rod and reel, and so I get it, and I'm on the way down to the dock. So James has been patiently waiting all day long, loves to fish, man, patiently waiting all day long. Well, this kid doesn't have a rod. He's freaking completely out. I want to fish. He's just going, "Oh, I wish I had a rod. I wish I could fish." And so I told James. James said, "Well, he can cast mine if he wants to. We'll let him cast it." And I said, "Oh, okay, James." So I hand this kid James his little Snoopy rod and reel, and I said, "Okay, you know how to cast?" He said, "Oh yeah, I know how to cast." I said, "Well, all right." Well, he's standing on the deck on the dock, and I'm standing just to the right of him, facing him. And when somebody casts a little closed-faced rod and reel, I mean, you fully expect them to just cast straight overhand, Well, I'm standing there about 3 feet from him because I'm going to watch him close. I don't know if he's going to throw the thing in the leg or not. When he casts, instead of casting overhand, he does this sidearm thing. And when he does, the tip of that little Snoopy rod and reel hit my lip. I felt it hit my lip, and then I felt the bobber go right across my lip, and then twing, that hook stuck in my top lip. He never got to make his first cast because he made his catch before he made his cast. Man, that thing stuck straight in my lip, and I said, man, I was trying to remain pastoral, and it was rather difficult, and I jerked it right out of his hand. I said, he's looking at me like, oh. And of course, I can't tell for sure what's happened, but I'm pretty sure I've got a hook hanging on my lip, and I reach up, and sure enough, so I turn around, and I'm going to make my way up to the fish hut and get Rambo to look at this thing because I can't get it out. I thought, it can't be that bad. I can't get it out of my lip. And so I'm making my way up there. And I had these, because we had gone into the pond and baptized these guys. Well, I had shorts on, T-shirt, and some flip-flops. Well, I'm carrying this rod, and I got the hook in my lip, and I'm trying to walk up to the fish hut, and the string's dangling down there and get wrapped up in my toes and my little flip-flops, man. And so every time I take a step, it's pulling on that thing again. So I'm trying to finally make it up to the fish hut. And when I got to the door of the fish hut, I said, hey, is Rambo in there? Because I wanted him to, I knew he would know how to get this thing out. I didn't know if it was in past the barb or not, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't get it out, so I wanted to get him to look at it. And I said, is Rambo in there? Well, this lady that's inside looks through the screen door of the fish hut, and she said, that looks real. I don't know how come people always say that to me. Oh, that looks real. I said, it is real. Get Rambo. I need some help. So she goes to get Rambo, and he comes back out and he looks at that and he goes, huh. And so he starts looking real close, and he said, hey, move your hands back out of the way so I can see better. Well, I knew what that meant, man. Rambo, he's a smart cat. I said, go for it, man. So I just I put my hands behind my back so he could just reach up there and jerk that thing out real quick. Because I had said, I don't know if the barb's in there. Can you look and just tell me if the barb is in there? And that's why he told me to move my hands. I had rolled my lip up where he could see it real good. So I put my hands behind my back, and he grabbed that string and just jerked real hard, real fast. And when he did, I think my lip extended about 3 inches out there. And then when it didn't come out, he looked at me and he said, yeah, the barb's in there. I said, oh, man. So we're trying to get a piece of ice. And
before you go any further, I'm going to go on record officially, because I don't even know if I've told you this part of the story before, but I want to go on record and put the input that I don't think you know, kind of the backstory here of how that ended up happening.
What? Go ahead, I want to hear it.
Pastor Butter Bread and his entire family had borrowed our camper and was using this piece of property for a family getaway camping trip.
That's right. They were on vacation, a little family vacation there.
Now, I had been out there at Rambo's Pond with Brad's oldest son, Micah, and we had been fishing all day long. And the problem we had with this pond, we were not old enough to take the boat out. And the places that were the best spots for the bass to fish, if you walked right up on it, there was a couple different places. 2 of them, if you walked right up on them, you'd scare the fish off because of the way the sun hit us at that time of the day and everything.
Right.
About the time this kid showed up. And me and Micah had discovered if we went around this bush, it would hide us from the fish so they didn't get scared off. And we were casting around the bush. And in order to get around a bush when you're casting along the bank, you've got to throw completely sidearm. This kid had showed up, and he'd been pestering me and Micah for hours. He wanted to fish, and he was tagging us along. The ever so classic little kid following you around.
Sorry, punk. You taught him how to. It's your fault.
Yeah,
it's your fault. You taught him how to sling sideways.
Hey, first I want to say it was Micah's idea to do that. No, I'm just kidding. That was completely my idea.
Naturally, that's what you'd always say first. Micah did it. Micah did it.
Yeah, Micah's going to come on here one day and wring my neck for that. But no, seriously, that kid had watched us for a solid 4 or 5 hours before the festivities started, casting around these bushes and trees, trying to get those bass to hit on these topwater baits. And we didn't. What were we supposed to tell you? Hey, watch that kid. He throws sidearm and on. But anyway, that's the reason he was trying to throw sidearm.
No, what y'all did, y'all stand back there and saying, hey, watch this, watch this.
No, I had no clue.
Dad don't have a clue what's figuring out.
Oh, yeah, but I will say it was pretty funny. And maybe it's just because I don't even know how old I was at that time. Probably.
Whatever. It's just because it wasn't a hook hanging out of your lips.
Yeah, no, but I will say.
Hey, look, you remember.
I was standing there when Rambo pulled that hook. And honest to God, it looked like your lip came down below your chin.
Oh man, it felt like it. I've always said 6 or 7 inches, but I mean that'd be kind of stupid looking for your lip to stretch out 6 or 7. But I promise you, it felt like it. And then the lady that said, "Man, that looks real," she said, "Get a piece of ice, and maybe you can numb your lip with some ice, and you get it on out of there." And so I said, "What?" So, but I tried it. I got a piece of ice, and man, that wasn't working. And then I walked around because. We made a phone. Rambo said, "Look, you're going to have some help getting it out of there, man." So, our youth guy was a dentist, and he wasn't there. But we made a phone call, and he was available. And he said, "Hey, I'm on my way." And we ended up using my camper that Brother Brad and him were staying in. We used that camper for a little impromptu emergency room. And so the youth guy comes, and Eddie brings his stuff and shoots my lip up numb, and he ends up getting it out. But you know what? Before he got there, I thought, man, surely. So I went out to a car, and I just leaned over and looked in somebody's mirror real quick so I could see. And, man, I'm thinking, why didn't they tell me? Why didn't somebody already tell me that the worm is still on this hook, man? When I looked down in the mirror, the worm, and it wasn't like a real worm. It was a little rubber wax worm that was on there or whatever. But anyhow, it's dangling there by my lip, and every time. I was trying to suck on some iced tea waiting for Eddie to get there. But anyway, I'm sucking it past that little worm on that hook. But, and you know what? When Eddie got there, I was telling him, I said, look, man, if you just make a little incision, it won't take much at all. It's barely in there. He didn't pull it out. And he told me, he said, man, when God created the human body, he created certain kinds of tissues for certain organs. And he said, and I can't remember which other. He said there's only one organ in the body that has the same kind of cell structure as the skin on your lip does. And he said, but if you ever get a scar on your lip, it's going to be recurring. In other words, it'll make a surface on your lip that your tongue will run over it all the time involuntarily. He said, if I make an incision on your lip, it's not going to heal back like you think it is. He said, so the best thing for us to do is to push the hook the rest of the way through your lip till it comes out of the other side. Then we'll cut the barb off and pull it back out. And I was like, say what? But that's exactly what he did. But he started trying to push that thing through my lip. And before it was over with, he had to give me shots in so many places to make my whole face numb because he couldn't get it to. He said, "Man, you got the toughest lip I have ever seen." He said, "This brings a whole new meaning. They ain't taking no lip off the preacher." But yeah. Anyway, he finally shoved it all the way through my lip and cut the barb off, and then we pulled it back out backwards.
He made that joke several times in youth. I didn't know if you knew that, but yeah, he's joked about that a couple times.
There's no telling how many jokes he made out of that deal.
Yeah, and you know
what's crazy about that? It was
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, the next morning, of course, I'm getting ready. That's a Saturday, and I'm getting ready for church on Sunday morning, and it's so cool. I mean, my lip was swollen up that night, and maybe just a little bit puffy still the next morning. So I'm getting ready for church and stuff, and I'm thinking. How in the world, what's the point of this? How can I use this? But man, while I was taking a shower and I was thinking about as simple as it was a brim hook, man, a little bitty hook, and I could not get it out. And man, the Lord just reminded me while I was getting ready for church that next morning, I had another problem at one point in time that I couldn't fix for myself either. That was my sin problem, and I could not, try as I might, I couldn't get it out by myself. I had to have help from someone else. And in the same way, so that Sunday morning, as always, I use that for an illustration about what God can do for us, what Jesus did on the cross, paved the way, made the way for God to remove from us that which we could have never removed from ourselves. The very thing that separates us from Him in holiness is the sin in our lives. And use that to illustrate 1 John 1:9. If you'll confess your sin, He's faithful and just to forgive us of our sin, to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He's good. So it all turned out for some good anyway. If you ever get a hook stuck in your lip, look for something good to come out of it,
Yeah, that's the best thing you can do is always look for something good to come out of whatever crazy stories. And you've used that story and all the stories we just relayed about your obsession with piercing your own body for some reason. At numerous events.
Man, I got more scars. Hey, the biggest body piercing scar I got, though, wasn't something I did to me. Something my brother did to me.
Oh,
my brother Kevin was mad at me one time when we were kids. We had a big yard and we had a push mower, and it was our responsibility to keep the yard mowed. And one time we'd mow the side yard, and the other time the other guy had to mow the side yard, and somebody mow the front yard. We were arguing over who gets to mow the side yard, and I just grabbed the mower, went out there mowing, and made him mad because I think I mowed the spot he was wanting to mow or something. But he got mad at me, and he sharpened a cane pole, it was a cane pole. He sharpened it, made like a spear out of it, and he chunked it at me. Well, I'm out there in the front yard, and I see him throw this spear at me, and so, man, I turned around, caught it in midair, and threw it back at him. Of course, neither one of us ever stabbed each other with a spear. Well, not before this day. But at any rate, so later on, man, I'm mowing the side yard. I guess for some reason I kind of felt guilty because it really was my turn to mow the side yard, I think, and I conned it, so I was mowing the easy yard, and he was so mad at me because now he's gone. So I kind of felt bad for him, and I went out there mowing the side. He was still mad at me, man. And I'm sitting out there mowing or doing whatever, and I got a pair of white shorts on and a white T-shirt, and I'm out there mowing the side yard or doing whatever, and I hear my brother scream, "God!" Just this curdling scream. And I turned. What happened was he's going to try again with that spear. He chunked it at me from up by the house, and when he realized, oh my gosh, it's going to get him. he screamed at me. Well, I turned around just in time to see that spear headed toward my chest area, and I reached to catch it real fast. And I thought, man, when I reached to catch it, I didn't quite catch it. It kind of deflected off and hit the ground. But I knew from his angle he couldn't see. And so I thought, I'm fixing to roll up in a ball here, and I'm going to act like I'm mortally wounded. He's going to come flying over here. When he gets here to me, I'm fixing to get up and wear his head out. So, man, I roll up in a ball. Oh, boy, he comes. Oh, my God. He's running across the yard to me. He's trying to spear me one minute and save me the next, So now he's running over there at me. And when he gets to me, I jumped up to grab him, and when I did, what I did not know, it all happened so fast. That time, when I went to catch that spear and it just deflected off my hand, I didn't quite get my hand in the right position. I didn't realize it, but that spear had gone through my hand right. Well, the point of it had gone between my thumb and my index finger, and there's a big artery right there. Well, that thing had pierced right in that artery and then flipped over and fell out the other side. So when I balled up in a ball and pulled my arms up to my chest, I had no idea that blood was just squirt out of that artery. So when he got to me and I jumped up to get him, man, my whole shirt was covered in blood. Blood was running down my arm, down my leg, and he thought it was a mortal chest wound. Man, it freaked him completely out. And when I looked down and I saw the blood everywhere, I just went bloop. I just kind of passed out. Well, that didn't help anything either, So he's trying to drag me up to the house, and yeah, I'm looking. Hey, dude, I'm telling you, I might have been, man, how old? I might have been 11 or 12, and so he's 11 months younger than I am. We're probably around that age. I'm looking at the scar right now, and I'm 52. I can still see it. It was a real deal, real day.
Oh,
hey, but
yeah.
We got great memories. Great stories.
Great memories. I'll tell one story right quick about my childhood. And my siblings, what some dumb stuff we did, and then I got some points I want to talk over for a second. But
all right,
you weren't home for this. Yeah, you won't remember this at all. And we'll have to get Peter on here to confirm this.
This ought to be good.
Oh yeah, but me and Peter, who is the closest in age to me, there's 4 years separates us. We were goofing around. I don't even remember. We were grappling over something. We were trying. Somebody was trying to fight something out of the other one's hand, and normally how it ended up is I had something Peter wanted. He would come after it, and then I would taunt him because he wasn't big and strong enough to pull it out of my hands. Which he grew into that big and strong enough part once he got a little older. But
yeah, he sure did. He definitely did that.
Yeah, I stopped growing, and he just kept going. It was kind of annoying there for a while. All my brothers are bigger than me, but that's beside the point. So I was kind of taunting him, I had something he wanted, and I knew he couldn't wrestle it away from me, but he thought he was going to, so we got to messing around, and we were in, growing up in your house, in that parsonage over for Shiloh Baptist Church, that there really wasn't enough room for as big of a family as we had, and at the time, me and Peter were sharing a room. No, at the time, Jonathan, James, and Peter, hang on, I'm trying to remember kind of how the rooms were situated. No, Jonathan and James were sharing a room, and me and Peter were sharing a room. Hannah had her own room. But for some weird, odd reason,
Make it up the way you want it, son. Just make it up the way you want it.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. Hey. No, seriously. Jonathan and James shared the smaller room that was halfway down the hall. Me and Peter had what used to be the master bedroom, and Hannah had her own room across the hall. But for some odd reason, me and Peter and one of the other two boys, I don't remember which one, were all in Jonathan and James's room, and Hannah was in there too. Everybody but one of Jonathan or James was not in there. And me and Peter were grappling over this thing, and I just decided I was going to... No, he decided he was going to smooth rip it out of my hands, one of the two. And so they jerked it all the way around, and when we did, it busted the light fixture on the ceiling. And as soon as that happened, Hannah screamed and took off running. And I was like, what the heck? And I look on the ground, and I'm literally blood trailing her like you would an animal into the kitchen. And come to find out what had happened was a piece of that glass had come and poked her right in the same place you're talking about and that webbing between your index finger and your thumb. And if you
same artery.
Yeah, if you've never cut yourself there, I've got scars on both hands where I've cut myself there fiddling around with knives and hooks and stuff, but that thing bleed like a stuck pig, man. and she was blood was gushing. And not to paint a bad picture of anybody in the family, but we have some individuals in our family who get really, really worked up in situations like this. And I won't name names, but one of those two's initials are Peter. And so Hannah comes flying around the corner, goes to Mom, and Mom's looking at it, and all Mom sees is blood everywhere. And so now she's worked up. She's trying to figure out what happened, plus calm Hannah down, plus figure out if we're going to have to make a trip to the hospital. And fortunately, I was in the Boy Scouts at the time, and I had just taken a course on where all the arteries were in the arm and everything, and so I'm telling Mom, it's like, it can't be an artery or a vein because all those are on the bottom side of the arm. She's bleeding from the top side of the arm, and the whole time Peter's just going haywire, and we'll have to get everybody on here to kind of fill in all the gaps. At some point, someone called 911. I think it was Peter.
But Peter, yeah, I heard it was Peter.
Yeah, and then there was a very distinct moment where everything's kind of going crazy. Everybody's screaming. You know, Mom's mad because we hurt Hannah and she can't figure out if we're going to the hospital. It's before I sat down, and right before I actually sat down and logically thought through and explained to Mom where the arteries were in the arm to kind of calm the situation down. Peter was losing his mind, and I think this was just before or just after he called 911. I am not sure the series of events exactly how they went kind of after everybody started freaking out. But I remember I had to grab Peter, and there's a big sibling debate right now between me and Peter over whether or not I physically picked him up off the ground and held him against the wall, or I just grabbed him. And but anyway, I remember looking him in the eyes and say, if you don't calm down and shut up, I'm going to knock you out. And he looked at me, he said, okay. And he was physically trembling as he walked down the hall. And then, and it is on record here, I'm admitting this. Peter loves to bring it up that this happened afterwards. But I sat down, Mom walked off so she could cool off probably and not beat the crap out of me and Peter. Because, the whole thing. So I was like, Mom, I got this. I took Hannah. I sat down in a chair, and I have since learned that your thumb has its own pulse. But at the time, I did not know this. So I was holding pressure on that wound that Hannah had with my thumb. And as I'm sitting there, I can feel a pulse coming through the rags and gauze I have stuffed over this thing. And all of a sudden, it just hit me. I can feel her pulse. That is how bad she's bleeding. And I started to get lightheaded. And Jonathan just happened to be right there by me. And I said, Jonathan, I need you to take her hand. And I don't know exactly where the words drooped off, but Jonathan said, you started explaining where I needed to hold pressure, and all of a sudden you just hushed up. And then from my perspective, I remember trying to explain to Jonathan what he needed to do. And all of a sudden, the room just started caving in. I couldn't see anything, and I kind of leaned my head back in this chair, and all I could see was the light. And then the light disappeared. And then after a couple minutes,
it's crazy to me, son. It's crazy to me, son, that you and your brother, our two that end up being Marines, are the ones. You remember he did the same thing when we told him not to mess with that knife one time. He's in the kitchen. And I said, man, don't mess. Your mom was telling him, don't play with a knife. And next thing I know, he's in there, and he said, He has cut him. He's got a knife, and he has cut the daylights out of himself. And when we get in there, he said, I got to go to sleep. I got to go. And then he just passed smooth out. Saw his own blood and was gone.
Oh, yeah, he was done. And for the record, he has a long list of reasons why that happened, and he likes to convert the story a little bit on that one. Because we got in an argument the other day over how that happened. But before we go on any more tangents, I want to spend a moment talking about where siblings, body piercings, and fishing all kind of intersect in a spiritual sense. It all starts, coincidentally, with two brothers named Andrew and Peter, and they were kind of, they were rednecks for back then. We appeal a lot to rednecks, and if you look... Jesus used the rednecks of his day. You know what I'm saying? He found the the consensus through all the Gospels is the first disciples he called them from the fishing boats and mending their fishing nets.
Yes, he did.
And he used, they didn't know it at the time, this sailed right over their heads, but he used a concrete concept that they were very familiar with of fishing and taking fish from the sea and eating it to explain what they were going to do for him and in his name later on in Acts once he died, buried, and was resurrected. And in Luke chapter 5 is one of my favorite recountings of how this happened. And I'm going to read it right quick. It's chapter 5, verse 1 through 11. It says, "On one occasion, while a crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, him being Jesus, he was standing by the lake of," I'm going to butcher this name, Gennesaret. I knew I was close.
Yeah, Gennesaret. I think.
Yeah, Gennesaret. And he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and he asked him to put him out a little from the land, and he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Hey, put out," paraphrasing in redneck here, "Hey, let's go out here and fish for a little bit." And Simon said, "Master, we've been doing this all night, and we didn't catch anything, but as your word, but you said it, so I'm going to do it. As your word, I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. And when Simon Peter, coincidentally Simon Peter, saw it, coincidentally, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch that they had just taken. And also were James and John, the son of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." Now you've used your story of getting a fish hook on your lip as a sermon illustration several times. But I always thought it was weird that you never used it for this, because when the first time you got up there and started telling the story, I thought, man, this would be a great transition into, that's not what that's probably what the disciples were thinking when God said, "Hey, you come with me and you're going to be catching men," which, crazy abstract redneck thought. But as far as they were concerned at this point in time, that's probably kind of what it seemed like to them. How is that going to work? But they went anyway. Yeah. And then later on, we see through Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, his body piercings is what saves our lives. And they go out and they do great things for Jesus. But I don't want to miss where they started. They started fishing for a living. Now, without taking too deep of a dive into Jewish culture, basically their education system was one of attrition. You went to, say, the first grade, the best of the best proceeded to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and by the time you graduated, the best of the best went to go study under a rabbi or a teacher to get involved in the ministry.
Yeah.
Now, if you didn't make
but only at the rabbi's invitation.
Yeah.
Only at the rabbi's invitation. Yeah. I was telling somebody about this the other day. Matter of fact, just yesterday I was teaching a class out at the rehab, and that's one of the things we talked about. It's kind of like when you finish elementary school, only the top maybe 10% got to proceed to middle school, and the others had to go to work. And then the same thing at the end of middle school, only like the top 10% there. And at the end of junior high, only the top 10% of that got to go. And so, yeah, on that day when they're out in those boats, I jumped right in and interrupted you, didn't I? On that day when they're out in those boats. And, I've always thought about this from a father and son kind of perspective, because I used to read that story and I would think, I imagine these dads are pretty hacked at Jesus, because he just took their whole labor. He took their whole work crew.
Yeah.
They're out there mending nets with their dad, and Jesus just says, hey, come follow me. And they ditch dad and the whole family business and go follow Jesus. And I always thought, man, how sorry did dad think that was? But in their culture, he would not have thought that was sorry, because when one of these kids managed to make it through the whole educational system without getting cut, the only chance they had to take the last and final highest honor step was if a rabbi came to them and spoke 2 words, and those 2 words were always the same: follow me.
Yeah.
Follow me.
Yeah.
And so that day, when those dads heard a rabbi come and say, follow me, it wasn't like a loss. It was a great gain. He's proud of his kids, proud of those boys.
Yeah. He's proud of them because they get to go follow a rabbi. But one thing that I would like to point out is Jesus didn't just stop at the follow me, which was what, obviously, as you just stated, what the rabbis would say. He said, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. Several translations say, I know especially over in Matthew, the ESV words it similarly to that, but he gave them a final goal. He didn't just say, hey, come follow me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, but when you entered into the study under the rabbi, there was no guarantee that you would become a rabbi later on, or am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're right. That's not an automatic guarantee, but that's the only chance you had to become one. So it's a major privilege to be invited to be a disciple of a rabbi. And so, man, a fantastic honor. Nobody in their right mind would turn it down.
Yeah, and
just a crazy honor to be invited.
That would essentially be like a business tycoon randomly walking up to you and say, hey, come work for me, and eventually I'll give you a position in my in my business, making a whole lot more than you would make now. And your name will be out there and all, and
yeah, right.
So on and so forth, to kind of put it in context. But I want to point out, Jesus didn't just say, hey, come follow me and you're going to get a chance to be a teacher. He said, come follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Not only did he pull them out of the fishing business, they went back to dad's business because they didn't make it through school. They were now given the opportunity to come study under the rabbi with a promise of, hey, I'm going to take this skill, this physical skill that you have, and I'm going to turn it into something that will benefit the kingdom. And that's the business that Jesus is in now. He's going to take you, in mine and your case, just a couple of rednecks who likes doing crazy things and telling crazy stories, and I'm going to use that skill to further my kingdom. You have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about some other people that God has done that with, and some of these are people that are not very well known by most, and I wouldn't even know who they were if it weren't for you, son. But I was listening to a podcast on the way over here this evening, and a guy named Monty Browning was sharing his story. And he's a mailman, and he's a tree trimmer.
Yeah.
Okay, but he's also an avid hunter, and he's a Jesus lover. And God manages, because of the crazy hunting adventures he's had, God manages to use those things for His glory. And again, those guys on the Stick Boys podcast, you put me onto that. Matter of fact, it was on one of their podcasts. I was listening to Monty Browning, but those guys are looking for every opportunity. They realize that the interest that they have in hunting, and in particular traditional bow hunting, has opened doors for them, and God is using that to advance kingdom purposes. And man, he's always been about that business, man. He'll use whoever with whatever gift or skill they'll give them, or whatever passion that they'll give over to him. He'll use it to make them a part of some kingdom level work.
Yeah, I mean, even something as simple or complex. You got me on the bows again. I just want the listeners to know he brought up bows this time. I didn't. He brought up traditional bow hunting. No, I'm just kidding. It's just where I'm at in life right now. But as you know, I've been doing some study and kind of putting together some stuff with this bow story that the Lord may put me in a position where
I can use that in the future. You know, I could see him using that, and we've talked about
where you get to go share your story. That'd be absolutely.
And so I've been working on putting it down on paper and all that, and something dawned on me the other day. Once I get all these bows made, which one am I going to have? You know, I'm going to have to decide. Which one am I going to take? And more than likely, it's going to be the one that either works the best or has the most sentimental value to me, right? Just like God is going to use either the bow He's going to use the tool that best fits the situation. If I were to find myself out in the middle of nowhere, I would probably grab the bow that's out in the middle of nowhere that's going to be useful. If I found myself in the bow shop looking around, it may be the one that's most efficient. You never know. And you always need to be prepared for God to use you, because He's going to use you if He can use it to His glory. Just like I'm going to use the bow I can get my hands on if I can use it to accomplish my goal, which in that case is to shoot a deer. And then
I was just thinking about a minute ago when we were talking about this a second ago. I thought about the Robinsons. Phil and those guys, they're just a bunch of redneck duck hunters. You've mentioned them in their Unashamed podcast several times. I've only listened to a handful of those, but it's amazing. These guys had an outlet, and they have maximized the opportunity to share the gospel through duck calls, man, of all things, that God would use that to connect passions and then open doors all over the nation and the world from some guys that, man, that he just chosen to use what they do for some kingdom purpose.
Yeah, God will use your passions. And I think that's demonstrated here in this passage when he says, "Follow me," which is what they needed to hear from a rabbi. Then he also said, "I'm going to make you fishers of men." In other words, I'm going to take your passion and I'm going to turn it into something more. And then later on, you see, where did the disciples go when they thought all was lost? When Jesus came back from the dead, he found them back out fishing. He kind of had to pound it into their head. Hey, listen, I know you guys are, this is what you know, this is what you like, but we got to go catch some people now. And we're not talking about sticking hooks in somebody's lip and dragging them around, making sure the barb's set, yanking their lip 6 inches, trying to get it out. We're talking about...
right.
Yeah, we're talking about pulling people into the kingdom. And it's, as a man fisher, I am going to term that coin. I said that, man. I said that wrong.
The man fisher.
Yeah, the man
fisher. There you go.
As a man fisher, it's not much harder than being a fisherman. If you're a fisherman and you go out, you find where the fish are, and you put what they need or want out in front of them, and that's how you catch them. When you're talking about sharing the gospel with people, and we obviously talk a lot about using our passions, man, you don't have to do anything crazy, wild. You don't have to have a degree in theology. If telling your story of how Christ found you works for you, then do that. You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
You would be...
and you don't have to have somebody else's story either. God gave you a story. Use the story God gave you.
Because you're the one He put in, you are the tool He put in that spot. You're the person that He's chosen to use in that person's life.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
It's not rocket science. It's as simple as somebody's going through something, or you have a buddy who is in a tight spot, or the conversation just leads that way, and you say, "Hey, I know I used to do this, and you used to hang out with me like that, but something's happened in my life." The other day, I was talking to a friend of mine from work, and he's had some stuff come up, and he made a comment. I'm thinking about getting my life together spiritually, so I just open door right there. You can't be any clearer than that. I was like, "Man, I'm gonna tell you, since me and you spent a lot of time together, God, I would describe it as God found me, not the other way around. And then I just started to talk to him through
That's
some
a
stuff.
great way to say that.
And up to that point in our relationship, I had not made an opportunity, and really I wasn't prepared to try to witness to anybody at the time. But that door was open, and I don't think he would have listened to me before, but now he did. And I just told him what God's been doing in my life. And we didn't say a prayer or nothing right there, but I could tell what I said impacted him. It's that simple. You don't have to, the end goal should not be walking somebody down an aisle. It should be saying, hey, I'm just going to point you to Jesus. And that's all a lot of people need.
Yep, and Jesus will take it from there and do the rest. Sometimes we want to play that role, man. We want to maybe put a notch in our belt or put the finish nail in, but he's the author and finisher of all genuine faith. Man, all I can do is walk and live with him and share the stories that he gives me and entrust him to use them as I share them with other people. Yeah, and son, I don't know if you've got a plan on how you want to wrap this thing up. We've been gabbing here for nearly an hour already, but while you were talking just a minute ago, man, I thought about this passage. I remember a sermon series I listened to by a guy, back in the 20-something years ago, and the title of the sermon series was Cleansed for the Master's Use, but he built that sermon series from this passage. You were talking about when you go hunting, you're going to use the bow that either has a certain sentimental value or the one that's the most effective. I thought about where Jesus said, he that's faithful in little, I'll make him ruler over much. I thought about him saying, he that has not, when he talked about the talents, to him that has nothing, take it away from him and give it to the one that has the most. Mm-hmm. Because, that's part of the kingdom system. But man, this passage in 2 Timothy chapter 2, says this, let everyone who names, this is verse 19 of 2 Timothy chapter 2, that second half of the verse, let everybody who names the name of Christ depart from iniquity or depart from sin. And, we told those stories about the nail being in my knee, the nail being in the back of my hand, and other nails I've had different places. But immediately when I shoot myself with a nail gun, immediately my first response is, get it out, because it doesn't, something foreign has entered my body that's not supposed to be there. It doesn't belong there, and I got to get it out. Well, as a believer, when I come to faith in Christ and now I have the spirit of holiness residing in me, when I get involved in sinful actions and sinful attitudes and sinful circumstances or things that displease God, immediately when I recognize that in my life, I want to get it out. And that's what he said. That's how we ought to be. Let everyone who names the name of Christ depart from iniquity. But the next verse says, in a great house there's not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and hay, some for honor and some for dishonor. Therefore, if anyone cleanse himself from the latter, he will be a vessel for honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. And so, I want to, when you said that a minute ago, when I go hunting, which bow am I going to take? I want to take the one that's the most effective. Well, that's how I want to walk. That's how I want to think. I want to live in such a way that I am prepared for him to take me off the shelf, man, for him to take me to the woods, for him to, why? Because I'm ready to be used. I've put myself in a place, or he's put me in a place, and I'm walking with him to the point where I am ready, I am willing, and I've been prepared to be used at the drop of a hat, that I would be the tool that he would reach for. And the only thing I can do about that, I can't control his end of it, but I can affect my own preparedness. And man, I can't do that because I want to be in his hand. And yes, I hope you do too, as our listeners. And there's only one way you can be prepared is he's the one who prepares us, he's the one who equips us, and he's the one who uses us. And at the same time, Drew, you said this in one of the other episodes. Man, when you make a bow, the bow can't get mad at where the arrow goes. Well, God is turning us into bows. It's not up to us to make sure that the arrow goes where it's supposed to go. It's our job to be the tool in his hand that he would use to launch the arrow. What happens with the arrow after it gets launched is strictly on him. We just be the bow in his hand. So I want to be a ready bow for his hand, ready for use. Ready for use.
Yes, sir. And if you get too wrapped up in judging your effects on the target, since we're going with the bow analogy here. You get too wrapped up on your effects on the target, you're not going to be convinced that you're doing what God designed you to do. And it's very easy to slide down that slippery slope of, oh, am I being used for God's kingdom? And that's where the enemy will slip in and start causing problems. So you have to literally surrender everything to God, because, and I know I described it in a previous episode, but I designed my bows to store energy, and the way the limbs bend, and I'm still learning quite a bit about these things. So far I've made 4, and 3 out of the 4 still shoot. Actually, I made 5, and 3 out of the 4 still shoot. But I try to build my bows so that the way those limbs arc, everything is one working together to store energy, and the whole limb is working so that none of it robs the energy that's transferred to the arrow. The bow ain't going to control where the arrow impacts. I am. All that bow can do is store energy when it's being drawn, and when I decide to release it, it transfers that energy from the limbs through to the string.
From the string. Son. Yeah, you're preaching now. Good. Yeah. Keep on going.
From the string to the arrow. That's all that bow is designed to do. And if you're judging where that arrow impacts, you're judging the guy who's shooting it. You ain't judging your capability to transfer energy. It reminds me of a story, coincidentally. Not a story, but a friend of yours, the guy who runs the rehab facility your church is involved with. Is it okay if I name drop this time? I kind of got ahead of myself.
Go ahead.
Jim Cooley was telling you one time, I've been struggling. I've really been struggling, Brother Todd. I got these guys. They come through the street, and they get saved, and they get clean, and they get all, and then I send them back into the world, and they fall right back into it. And I was struggling with God, and he just told me, you can't measure your success by how many guys come back through here. God didn't tell Jimmy Cooley to start that place so he can have a bunch of guys that are cleaned up. He told him to start it because he wanted him to start it so that he could use it for what he wanted.
Yeah, the way he says that is he was feeling like, man, God, I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm not fixing these guys. They're still messing up. And that, just like you just said, that's a great illustration of that. He said the Lord reminded him, did I ever call you to fix anybody? I didn't call you to fix anybody. I just told you give them a place where there can be an environment for them to be saturated in my word, and I'll take care of the rest. The same picture you just gave of that bow. Hey, when you said storing up energy, if I am a bow in my master's hand, if he's the master bowyer and I'm the bow he's crafting and I'm in his hand, man, all it's my job to do, the best thing I can do to be prepared to be the one that he's going to grab and pick up and use in the battle is to be sure I'm storing up energy and ready for him to use it, ready for him to manipulate me to the place where he can release his energy that he has crafted to be stored up inside of me.
Yep.
Kapow, man. What a great illustration, son. Preach that. That's good. Oh, yeah, that's good stuff right there.
Oh, it gets deep. It gets deeper from there. Just to give you a glimpse into what I've been working on. Do you know how you store up energy? The way you store up energy, the way a bow stores up energy is, like I said, with everything working, and the way that I get the whole limb working, and don't misinterpret me, listeners. I am not a master bowyer. I still classify myself as a hobby bowyer, and I'm sure most bowyers would as well. But the way you get that bow to all the limbs to work is you have to shape it so that it is transformed from the shape of just a bow to where it submits to the arc that I need it to take, so that the whole limb is bending in unison. So the only way for that bow to store energy is to submit to the pressure that I'm putting on it and bend a certain way. Just like with us, the only way you can effectively store energy is to submit to the arc that the master is working you towards.
Well, that's a good word, son. That's a good word, son. Well, you know what? We're going to have to come back with another episode and let you just dive into that some. And also, at some point, you're going to have to make yourself available to be able to share those stories with different places. Let me just share this thought with you. Hey, this podcast is not a fit for everybody. We understand that. But you may be listening and you're like, I think my buddy would enjoy that. Hey, share this with folks. And then also, we just want to let you know, if you want to contact us, if you have any questions, we did an episode not too long ago and we mentioned some atheists. Well, we've had quite a conversation going today with somebody who considers himself an atheist, listened to our podcast and then just began to send us messages back and forth. Hey, don't hesitate to email us. Email me, brot, B-R-O-T, at windstream.net. You can email Andrew, or if you email me and have a question for him, I can forward it to him. But, man, we'd love to hear from you, and I want to encourage you, hey, rate us, share us, subscribe, and let us know, how we can be helpful for you guys. Thank you for being a part and listening. Anything else you want to add, son?
No, sir. Just be prepared for more bow illustrations later on, because I'm still learning, and my bow story is not quite done yet, so there's a lot more to come.
Man, I can't wait to hear this whole thing.
Well, it may be a while, because this is a lifelong learning event. Just like Jesus said, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. You can insert any hobby, passion, whatever into that phrase. Follow me and I'll make you a bow builder of men. Follow me and I'll make you an editor of people, But the Lord's still working, and one of these days I'll be able to sit down and share this thing, and who knows, it may not be until I'm gone that one of my boys can carry on and tell the whole story. But anyway, thanks for listening. Have a blessed day, and stay ready, because there may be a whopper person that you need to hook. Just make sure, if you find yourself in Dad's situation, make sure the worm, is off the hook.